conceived in the late days of World War II, but would earn its fierce reputation in the next conflict. Built in the mid-1940s as a day fighter, problems plagued this plane in its early stages. But during the Korean War, this jet became the Air Force's primary strike aircraft. I'm Paul Max Moga, and I've flown some of the most sophisticated fighter planes ever built. This is the Virginia Air and Space Center, located in Hampton, Virginia, the birthplace of America's space program. On this episode of Great Planes, we'll tell the remarkable story of the Republic F-84 Thunderjet.
Hi, I'm Kenneth Flick. I'm the Educator Resource Manager here at the Virginia Air and Space Center.
Well, Ken, I sure appreciate you taking the time to show us around the F-84 today.
This particular aircraft right here actually flew in 3 different squadrons over its life. When it was retired from the Air Force inventory, it went to the National Guard in Puerto Rico and stayed with the National Guard in Puerto Rico up until its retirement in the early 1970s. So the plane was around for a long time. This particular one going into inventory in 1955.
Yeah, 20 plus years.
20 plus years, and the Air Force was gracious enough to let us have this aircraft.
The F-84 series of jets starts in 1944 in response to the U.S. Air Force's request for a daytime pursuit aircraft to keep up with German and British models encountered in World War II. The Lockheed Corporation is developing one of the first jet aircraft, the P-80 Shooting Star. Meanwhile, at Republic Aviation, a sleek and extremely clean design built around General Electric's new axial flow engine impresses Army brass, and 3 XP-84 prototype jets are ordered. The first plane, ready by December 1945, heads to the testing center for Army evaluation. There, on the 28th of February, 1946, the F-84 Thunderjet takes to the air, the first post-war American fighter. The conventional straight-wing, all-metal design employs laminar flow wings, which help reduce drag. Though not technologically advanced for the time, this classic-style aircraft incorporates the best ideas of the day. Models rapidly evolve, produced in small numbers until the E model arrives in 1949. Over 840 of the E model will eventually be built. But the plane has problems from the start, as do most early jets. The straight wing, the most obvious design flaw, will eventually mature into a swept wing version. But the biggest problem is the design's lack of serious power. Like all early jets, the sluggish Thunderjet requires an extra long runway for takeoff. To help get it airborne more quickly, a rocket is attached underneath to assist it off the ground, and then the rocket is released once airborne. Because more powerful engines mean more weight, rather than a costly upgrade, all models would keep the JATO assist for takeoff. Development is slow, and in the interim, production begins on improved straight-wing versions. This, the G model, is the most popular. with 3,025 constructed. With the speed limitations and underpowered engine, the F-84's original mission as an interceptor quickly gets surpassed by North American's F-86 Sabre. In tactical support and air-to-ground strike operations, however, the F-84 G model gains a fierce combat reputation. Its low-mounted wing proves an asset, allowing easy arming with minimal equipment. With up to 4,000 pounds of bombs, the Thunderjet packs a mighty punch. Its rocket-assisted takeoff enables it to fly from short frontline strips in fairly rough conditions. And its rugged construction absorbs small arms fire with little worry. For ground attack, the Thunderjet boasts 6 machine guns, each carrying 300 rounds. For attacking tanks, it can sling up to 32 5-inch rockets from under its wings and fuselage. And to add to its strike power, the plane can deploy a blazing load of napalm.
What did the F-84 have on it as far as air-to-ground or air-to-air ordnance?
The aircraft had 6 50 caliber machine guns in the nose, internal. Each 50 cal had about 300 rounds. It was capable of carrying up to 4,450 pounds of ordnance under the wings and in the center line of the aircraft. And the F-84 G model, which was a straight wing aircraft, had the capability of carrying a Mark 7 atomic bomb, which for a plane this size is pretty incredible.
While the straight wing design makes it solid in a tactical role, it limits the jet's speed. It also lacks maneuverability, making it too slow and clumsy for a fighter plane. But the qualities that make it a bad fighter plane become assets in a ground attack. The original production version, the B, shows little advancement from the 1945 piston engine fighters. Later models and submodels grow more sophisticated. By the G version, the plane's features include radar-assisted sighting, autopilot, and revised electrical, fuel, and hydraulic systems. The early jet engines guzzle fuel, and the Thunderjet has limited internal storage. Wingtip tanks boost capacity, but only to a total range of 1,200 miles or so. When the G model is introduced, it can manage 2,000 miles. And that's just the start. Because the Strategic Air Command employs it as an escort fighter, the plane becomes the first U.S. fighter to have an in-flight refueling capability. It's not perfect. The receiver on the left wing disrupts the airflow over a considerable portion of the wing's surface. Ironically, the G model exists only because of delays in developing the swept wing designs. However, by 1952, the new and hopefully improved design tries a test flight.
when the F-86 from North American came out. The Republic wanted to keep up with them, so they designed the F-84 with a swept-back wing. They took an E-model fuselage, slapped on two wings at a 40-degree from center, swept-back wing. They swept back the tail section and tried to increase the performance.
Keep up or abandon ship, huh?
Well, you might say that, but I don't think the Republic was going to really abandon ship, but they wanted to try to keep up with the Joneses.
The new swept wing gets renamed the F-84F and bears the company name Thunderstreak. But as a fighter plane, it doesn't deliver as promised. In fact, despite its powerful engine and streamlined shape, the plane is as sluggish as ever and still can't take off quickly. The issue of weight keeps holding it down. At 695 miles per hour, the F model beats the G model's maximum speed of 622. But in climb and ceiling, it underperforms the straight-wing planes. Like its predecessors, the F model joins the ranks of the tactical fighter bombers. Budgetary constraints contribute to the swept wing's slow development. When the disappointing prototype flies on June 3, 1950, it clearly demands a more powerful engine. But without the funds to develop one, the project stalls. In 1950, the cost of flying an F-84 Thunderstreak was $390 an hour. Today, that cost would equal roughly $3,500 an hour.
As defense budgets tighten after World War II, the development of swept-wing fighter jets stalls. Congress cuts off funding and the U.S. Air Force has no more money to allocate. When a disappointing prototype flies on June 3, 1950, it highlights a major problem. The F-84 demands a more powerful engine. But without the funds to develop one, the project comes to a complete standstill.
Then, only 22 days after the test flight, the U.S. gets word that communist forces have invaded South Korea. Suddenly, the floodgate of defense dollars blows wide open. When war breaks out in Korea, the United States Air Force is a mere shadow of the victory machine that existed 5 years earlier. And the South Koreans have no actual Air Force, only 22 aircraft, all trainers, without a gun or bomber between them. Their airfields, few and rudimentary, can accommodate only piston-engine aircraft, forcing American jets to operate from Japan. The jets arrive at the battlefront with limited loiter time available. The U.S. deploys a force barely up to the task, while the North Korean Air Force isn't much better. The North has nearly 100 fighters, 62 light attack planes, and 10 reconnaissance planes. To help paralyze the northern effort, the U.S. enlists heavy bombers in a combination of interdiction and strategic raids. Combining Navy aircraft and whatever the Air Force can deploy from the limited Korean airstrips, the U.S. promptly destroys the entire North Korean Air Force, slowing its advance. Because the P-51 Mustangs and P-80 Shooting Stars can do the job, the U.S. doesn't initially send F-84s to Korea. But on the 9th of November 1950, the situation changes radically. North Korea starts deploying Soviet MiG-15 jet fighters. Within days, the United States sends in their own jets. On December 6th, less than a month after the MiGs appear, the F-84 flies its first combat mission. The planes join F-86 Sabres committed to the battle. Outclassed as a fighter by the swept-wing MiGs and Sabres, the F-84 settle into a life of tactical air-to-ground missions. Most of the time, they require Sabres as mission escorts in case they run up against the lightning-fast MiGs. In their tactical role, the F-84s prove invaluable. Thunderjets officially shoot down 9 MiGs and potentially down or damage another 96. Against this, the MiGs down 18 Thunderjets and damage many more. Anti-aircraft fire claims a greater share of the F-84s. 122 are shot down by ground forces. Though some missions fly straight from Japan and require in-flight refueling, the rugged Thunderjets can operate from the rough and ready facilities in Korea. After each rocket-assisted takeoff, the jetpacks get retrieved for reuse. In squadron formation, the dense rocket smoke blinds everyone but the squadron leaders, so everyone else must rely on their instruments during takeoff. The routines of briefing, ground operations, takeoff, and attack grow familiar. The F-84s take on a great burden, not only in ground support at the front lines, but in interdicting supplies, attacking reinforcements, and destroying bridges, railways, and power stations. They operate as a strategic force, trustworthy, rugged, and deadly. They prove themselves as a primary weapon in the Air Force's arsenal.
So they took this airframe that was substandard for a period of time, and they Frankensteined it into something that ended up accounting for 60% of the target kills in a pretty large conflict.
Exactly.
And turned it into something that really went over there and did the job it was supposed to do.
Exactly. They were trying to make it into a fighter, but they found out that its best role was an air-to-ground attack aircraft. The F-84 had quite a variety of missions that it could do and do a lot of damage. And it accounted for 60% of the targets destroyed during the Korean War in 86,000 missions.
86,000 missions.
Now, it turned out to be quite an airplane. It truly did.
It's almost like an unsung hero.
In the Korean conflict, the Thunderjet really shows its stuff. Despite its nickname, Mechanic's Nightmare, compared to other early jets, it's easy to maintain. And its stability makes it an effective attack platform, able to withstand considerable damage. Still, compared to its Republic relatives, such as the P-47 in the Second World War and the great F-105s in Vietnam, the Thunderjet's aerial performance is simply not up to par. In addition to the unflattering nickname Groundhog the F-84 Thunderjet had received, it also earned the nickname Mechanic's Nightmare, due to the constant shortage of parts and maintenance difficulties.
Seen in the context of its era, the Thunderjet was a truly great plane. Many early jets make worthy contributions in Korea, but the difficult and dangerous tasks of the conflict fall to the Thunderjet for one simple reason. They prove capable where other planes fail the test of combat. Still, the Thunderjet's vices and limitations earned them some unflattering nicknames. Groundhog refers to the plane's unwilling and sluggish takeoff. During Korea, when the airplane proves its worth and wins some respect, the crew shortened the name to the slightly more affectionate Hog.
With the U.S. development of the atom bomb, many lessons of the Second World War fly out the window. Some strategists even proclaim the end of conventional large-scale warfare. But soon, the Russians also build the bomb, and suddenly, under the threat of nuclear retaliation, atomic weapons don't seem so useful. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction is invented, and a new concept, limited war, gets postdated to cover the Korean conflict. In that limited war, the Thunderjets are hailed as one of the most effective weapons available. By the end of the Korean War in 1953, a series of confrontations and negotiations completely changed world politics. The process culminates in Paris on October 23, 1954, with the end of the occupation of West Germany. From that date forward, English, American, and French troops remain in Germany as friends to help its defense. The Germans, many of whom feel deep shock and shame over what their government did, find themselves welcomed back into the family of nations. On the 13th of November 1956, the German Luftwaffe is allowed their first combat planes since the end of the Second World War. Among them are F-84 Thunderstreaks. Eventually, the Germans will deploy 5 full wings of the Thunderstreaks, making Germany the largest user of the planes outside the U.S. Air Force. During the years that follow, the F-84 demonstrates its versatility through design variations. One, the RF-84F Thunderflash, answers Korea's need for a high-speed photographic reconnaissance platform. Korea requires a plane that can get the job done while avoiding MiGs. The new photoplane needs a longer range and faster speed than existing models. Some of the refinements include the close pointed nose and wing root air intakes, which allow the aircraft to carry up to 15 cameras. These design changes create the most successful production aircraft of the whole F-84 family. The prototype RF-84 took its first flight in February 1952. Since then, the design has evolved considerably. The wing intakes and wing surfaces have increased, and the neat pointed nose grows blunt to house 6 cameras. After successful testing, the plane goes into production. Engine difficulties delay production until 1955, but eventually they start to roll out of the factory. 715 are produced, and after a short career in the active duty Air Force, they serve with the National Guard. The U.S. military assistance programs also supply 386 of them to allies. For all its popularity, the Thunderflasher is designed as a stopgap until newer planes come along. The McDonnell F-101 Voodoo replaces it. But the Thunderflasher's long subsequent career with the National Guard underlines how well the Republic team tackles the task of creating a photo reconnaissance plane. Like the entire F-84 family, the Thunderflasher features the simplified maintenance and ground operation access that influences later designs. Even the first Thunderjets have over 180 access panels. The entire tail section can be removed to simplify engine servicing. This level of detail, irrelevant to the aircraft in flight, ultimately increases the operating life of the plane. the F-84 doesn't go unnoticed by Air Force brass. No one can say if the team takes its name from Republic's plane, but when the Thunderbirds form in 1953, they fly straight-wing F-84s. And they keep flying them for 2 years. For the 1955 season, the Thunderbirds take delivery of new aircraft, still F-84s, this time a swept-wing F model. The F-84 owes much of its success to its suitability as a technological testbed. During the 1950s, it would help pioneer in-flight launch and retrieval, zero-length launch, and air-to-air refueling. Although the Republic Aviation Corporation no longer exists, it is responsible for 3 aircraft that played important roles in 3 major wars: the P-47 Thunderbolt in World War II, the F-84 Thunderjet in the Korean War, and the F-105 Thunderchief in the Vietnam War. The various evolutions of the F-84 Thunderjet have proven worthy of the U.S. Air Force's time and commitment. Serving its allies well, models are used successfully in ground attack and reconnaissance before, during, and after the Korean conflict. Now, FICON, short for Fighter Conveyor, hopes to solve an aerial surveillance problem. Over hostile territory, large reconnaissance aircraft prove too vulnerable. But less conspicuous fighter planes and their pilots don't have the range or endurance to reach the far-flung territories marked for surveillance. FICON presents a new plan. A B-36 bomber, acting as a mothership, carries the photo reconnaissance fighter for all but the dangerous leg of the mission, launching and retrieving it in flight. But the plan becomes a challenge to execute. Before a reliable system is reached, the bomber crews and fighter pilots trust their lives to a precarious series of attachments. In 1952, project testing begins with a modified F-84E Thunderjet. Problems arise almost immediately. First, with the stability of the cradle on the mothership, and then with the trustworthiness of the fighter's hydraulic grapple. As equipment gets adjusted and redesigned, the project inches closer to success, but the challenges seem endless. The fighter, loitering beneath the large plane and buffeted by the slipstream, risks stalling at the low end of its speed range. To avoid disaster, the procedure demands a high degree of ability from both pilots. In 1953, RF-84Fs are modified to operate as parasite aircraft and are now designated RF-84Ks. Testing begins on the 30th of March, when the prototype makes its first successful docking. Modifications to the F-84 include 3 hydraulic latches and drastic remodeling of the horizontal tail to allow the plane to retract into the B-36 bomb bay. Testing of FICON continues until 1955, when production begins. The 91st Strategic Reconnaissance Squadron, based at Larson Air Force Base, receives 25 of the specialized RF-84Ks, teamed with a squadron of modified B-36s. Experiments and in-squadron training continue until 1956, and then are abandoned. By coincidence, about this time, the U-2 arrives on the scene. After the Russians develop their own atomic weapons and delivery systems, American planners are haunted by the fact that a single Soviet strike can wipe out an entire airfield and its aircraft. Add to this the jet's total dependence on long, straight, conspicuous concrete runways, and the military realizes it has a problem on its hands. They arrive at a peculiar solution. The new plan, Zero-Length Launch and Matte Landing, or ZELMAL, proposes to boost launch an aircraft into the air, then land it by making a low pass and hooking onto a cable, which would slow the plane, flopping it on its belly on a large air-filled mat. The idea is to reduce required area for takeoff and landing. Planners visualize hundreds of aircraft dispersed throughout forests and in other hiding places around the Soviet bloc's borders. These planes, fully armed and battle-ready, can respond immediately to Soviet attack. The Martin Company runs tests with equipment developed for the Matador missile program and unmanned F-84G aircraft. The first launch takes place on December 15, 1953, as the F-84 rapidly accelerates from the truck and finds its own way back to Earth. Another unmanned trial follows. The system relies on powerful solid-fuel rocket boosters attached directly to the aircraft. Once the rocket spends its fuel, the heavy booster then falls away to reduce drag on the aircraft. The tests demonstrate that by the time the rocket fuel burns out, the aircraft has accelerated to 175 miles per hour, well above stall speed. The plane can then switch to its normal jet engine. The two unmanned trials go so well that testing moves on to the next phase. January 5, 1954. With the third trial comes the litmus test, a piloted plane. The acceleration forces reach 3.5 Gs, only slightly greater than a standard Navy catapult launch. The pilot has no difficulty taking control, and the test is deemed a success. The project continues, and in 1956, they begin testing with North American F-100 Super Sabres. However, this time the project is modified. Instead of the plane landing on a mat, once the jet is launched, the pilot bails out over friendly territory. The project's name is shortened to ZEL. Orders are placed for 148 suitably modified F-100s. Meanwhile, the Russians perform a series of similar experiments using MiG-19s. Despite the ZEL program's encouraging results, the development of more reliable and accurate missile systems renders it obsolete. The program gets scrapped. On September 7, 1946, an XP-84 prototype set a United States speed record of 607.2 miles per hour. F-84Gs are considered for the ZELMAL project, which is designed to blast the fighter into the sky by a booster rocket. The plane would land with its gear up on a huge inflatable mat and snag an arresting cable to stop. The project is in response to the Cold War threat from the Soviets. While they are put through a battery of tests, the program eventually gets scrapped for more modern missile technology. But experimentation in the F-84 doesn't end. One of the other models, the XF-84H Thunderscreech, is designed as a supersonic propeller-driven aircraft. The Navy orders 2 prototypes, hoping to develop them for carrier deployment. Before building its turboprop, the designers study a series of propellers. Its first flight takes place on the 22nd of July, 1955, and the plane passes with only one hitch. It can't break Mach 1. It manages a respectable 670 miles per hour, making it the world's fastest propeller-driven aircraft, but the Navy deems it worthless. At supersonic speeds, standard propellers face a serious problem. At speeds nearing Mach 1, different parts of the propeller simultaneously travel at speeds above and below the speed of sound, creating enormous stress. To overcome it requires revolutionary changes in propeller design. Experiments with the XF-84H prove the ruggedness of the three-bladed propeller and the soundness of the engineering of the power plant and aircraft. But with the introduction of steamed catapults, angled decks, and air-to-air refueling, the Navy turns its main focus from the supersonic turboprop project to true jet aircraft. That leaves the U.S. Air Force to pursue the project as a matter of basic research and development for its own purposes. Besides being the world's fastest propeller-driven plane, the XF-84H is considered the noisiest aircraft ever built. The large Allison engine blasts nearly 6,000 horsepower, but that creates only a small fraction of the noise. The rest comes from the propeller. At high revolutions, even in ground maneuvers, the propeller tips go supersonic, and the plane emits multiple sonic booms per minute. During testing, the horrific noise from a single plane actually sickens the ground crew, causing discomfort and nausea to anyone near the aircraft during taxiing, run-up, or takeoff. The idea of a whole squadron of these planes taking off from a carrier's deck becomes unthinkable, and the plane and supersonic propellers are canceled. In contrast to the ill-fated XF-84H, the XF-91 Thunderceptor stands as one of the most amazing experimental aircraft of its era. This derivative of the F-84 boasts 4 rocket chambers plus a powerful jet engine. The combination helps the XF-91 to become the first U.S. combat plane to break the speed of sound in level flight. The aircraft wings pivot to adjust the angle of attack, and its full-length slats enable unheard-of in-flight maneuvers. The plane also has a very low stall speed. The wings, radical for their time, taper in from tip to fuselage. This reverses the effect of wingtip stall, turning dangerous pitch up into easily controllable pitch down. The XF-91 plans call for an even bigger power plant, enabling the plane to reach Mach 2. Even with the limited power of the available engines, it can zoom to 1.2 times the speed of sound. Though clearly the most sophisticated design of its time, its high cost dooms its development. Economics often flies in the face of Republic's commitment to advanced design. Another of their projects, the XF-103, capable of reaching Mach 3, also never reaches production. The XF-103, a delta wing, gets power from a turbojet and ramjets. The plane has no canopy, so the pilot sits totally enclosed. An F-84 is used to test periscope systems for the XF-103 pilot, and this strange mutant Thunderjet proves that the system can work. The F-84 enjoys a long and uneventful career in the Air National Guard, still plagued by its groundhog takeoff but trusted and respected by its pilots. While the planes spend most of their time as a second division of aircraft for the U.S. Air Force, many other nations depend on them for the front line. Even so, the F-84 slips into history as new equipment comes along. Despite years of hard use, the plane never overcomes a reputation tarnished by development difficulties and lack of power. But to dismiss them is to overlook their significant achievements, particularly in Korea.
Most of the time you hear about the F-86 and its MiG kills, the 10-to-1 ratio in MiG kills, and nothing much about the F-84. But the F-84 had quite a variety of missions that it could do and do a lot of damage.
I mean, that's amazing versatility from an aircraft that is this size and went through the design challenges that it went through, all the way from dropping dumb bombs to shooting 50 cals to potentially having to drop an atomic weapon, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
It speaks for the guys that built it, the guys that designed it, and then also the guys that flew it.
Like the rest of the first generation of jet fighters, the F-84 links old-style piston-engine planes to the more effective aircraft known as the Century series, the second generation of jets. The Century fighters reach greater success simply because they build on the knowledge gained from earlier aircraft. Within the first generation, only the F-86 Sabre outclasses the Republic planes. And only because it too draws on the knowledge gained by the F-84's career. In a pioneering era of airplane design, the F-84 is blessed with many virtues that overcome its limitations.
The F-84, for all its faults, shines during the Korean conflict as one of the most dependable and rugged of its contemporaries. Operating brilliantly from the worst airstrips under abominable conditions, the F-84 earned an impressive service record. In addition, experiments with the aircraft spawned refinements that changed the face of aviation to this day. In a very distinguished family, the F-84 sits between two of the most successful tactical fighters of all time, the P-47 Thunderbolt and the F-105 Thunder Chief. All of them, in their own right, great planes.